Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy, and while we're waiting for the next DLC, the Lords of the End Times, I wanna show you this very high quality Nagash mod that you should definitely give a try. In this video we'll focus on the unit roster, the stats of the new units, how they perform in battle, and also the new lore of Magic. So don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy my video, and let's begin. Hi, I'm Alberto, I'm a real person, and here you will find the beginner's guide, the battle unit roster, tier list, ranking, and many shorts. So if you wanna support the channel, please consider to subscribe. Let's start with the first legendary lord, of course Nagash, the Lord of the Undead. Don't worry, there is the Supreme Lord version that the model is far better, but at the beginning of your campaign, before achieving the short campaign victory, you will get this version that is a mere spellcaster with access to the lore of the Undeath that is unique in this mod and some abilities. But yeah, basically you should not let him engage in melee and just keep it safe behind the front line to cast spells. And here we have the Supreme Lord of Undeath version of Nagash. That is truly what we are expecting for the next DLC, the Lords of the End Times. He's very strong in melee with a very good melee attack and melee defense. The weapon strength is 500 by default with armor piercing damage, anti-large bonus, the magical damage, and the charge is very limited and the speed is quite low for this kind of entity. But it got plenty of armor, so it's definitely made to absorb damage and deal some damage itself. He got, as I said, the spells from the lore of Magic of Undeath that you can summon some units like the Dark Riders, the Black Knights, the Crypt Ghouls, and then there are some other buffs, debuffs, and there is also a wind ability that will create this kind of undead dogs that they will work as a wind spell. And an ability that I really think it's worth to mention is the Harbinger, that will basically make him summon a White King, a Lich Priest, and a Fleet Captain all together, that they will fight for you. And this is one of the craziest ability that I've ever seen, because you're creating three generic heroes at your disposal, at your service, and this is great. As a second legendary lord, we got Neferata, Mortarch of the Blood, that I'm really looking forward to play with her in the next DLC, the Lords of the End Times. She will come as a DLC, and yeah, I really wanna see the version of Creative Assembly. Now, she's a spellcaster with a selection of spells from the Lords of Magic of Shadows and the Lore of Magic of Vampires, that it's a good combo for me. She will get access to the mount of Nagadron, the Adevor, that is a Dread Abyssal. This is one of the units that I'm most excited for the next DLC, because I think that is the best mount ever. It's a flying beast with a lot of strength, and wonderful. Then she's a vampire, of course, so she will get the regeneration and some abilities linked to her beauty. For example, the seduction that will reduce the melee attack and the speed of the enemies, the beautiful death that will prevent a lord or a hero from the enemy army to move if the hit points are less than 50%, and then other stuff that will increase her power. As a third legendary lord, we got Calidria, the Mortarch of Sorrows, that is a character that I didn't know, honestly. She's basically this melee specialist and ghost with a physical resistance of 55%, the Strider attribute of course, but her main feature is this range attack that is very powerful in my opinion. She got some abilities like the Harp of Echoes that will cause the enemies to rampage, the Piercing Anguish that it's an explosion in case you need to get rid of some enemies that are surrounding you, and the Dread's Embrace that will reduce the leadership and the melee capabilities of all the enemies, and this effect will increase with the time spent engaged in melee. And then, as I said, these very powerful range attacks that it's some kind of musical thing, but it causes plenty of damage with the bonus versus infantry, and even in melee she's not that bad. She got plenty of melee attack. The armor is 0, so I would not suggest you to send her against a platoon of enemies, but more against one single character to take down. This is just to show you the new mount of Archon, now called the Mortarch of Sacraments, that as you can see will get this Dread Abyssal like Neferata, called Razarak, the Doom of Traitors. The same for Manfred von Karstein, that will be the Mortarch of Night, and he will get access to the mount Ashigaroth the Gorger upon the Meek. And of course there are all the other Mortarchs available for these Undead Legions. There is Luthor Archon, there is Vlad von Karstein, and there is also Krell. And yeah, but they will not get access to a new mount, that's why I'm not showing them to you. As a legendary hero we got Geneviève Dieudonné, that she's supposed to be a wizard but she got no spell for some reason. I think that in the battlefield she definitely nothing special, she has nothing, I mean she's not even a duelist, she's not a wizard, but in the campaign she will have many abilities that can boost your army, and this is the only reason to recruit her. As a generic hero we got the Morghast Archai, that is wonderful. We will get the same unit in the next DLC, the Lords of the End Times, and I'm looking forward to see the version of Creative Assembly. In any case, a very good melee lord. He can fly, so you can send it wherever you want with plenty of armor. It will be very hard to take down. It's quite fast, okay, with 95 of speed. The melee attack and melee defense are very huge, and the weapon strength with armor piercing damage and the anti-large bonus, so it's great also against the cavalry. He will get many attributes and abilities like the Fuseeker, the Deadly Onslaught, and the Herald of the Accursed One, that will grant the melee attack and physical resistance to all the allies that are within the range of 30 meters. And then the Encourage, like you will see later the Morghast themselves, that they will increase the leadership of all the allies within the aura, and the Strider and the missile resistance. I mean, many different stuff, and yeah, I just love it. Now let's quickly address the new lore of magic introduced with this mod, the lore of Undeath, that we will probably get also for the next DLC, the Lords of End Times. Let's start with the first spell, the Soul Stealer, that is a regeneration ability that will affect all the allies within an aura, so you will be able to heal multiple allies at the same time. Then we got the Breath of Darkness, that is a regeneration that will affect a single unit in this case, but it will also increase the speed. The Dark Riders, that you will be able to summon a unit of Black Knights that are quite fast, and they can be useful if you want to reach, for example, an artillery piece that is very far from your main army and you don't have other fast units to debilitate it. Then the Grave Call, that will summon a unit of Crypt Ghouls that you can use a couple of times, and they can be great against melee infantry. Then the Abyssal Storm, that it's a wind spell that create these packs of walls that they will just attack the enemy in following a forward moving direction. And then there is the Hand of Dust, that is a hex that will affect a single enemy that it has to be a single entity, so like a monster for example, and it will cause plenty of damage for several seconds. Of course, you can use this lore of magic not only with the Nagash, but also with some generic lords and heroes. Now let's talk about the melee infantry units that you will get access to for the faction of the Undead Legions. The first one is the Skeleton Reapers, that is a scythe infantry, quite cool because you have 160 entities with mid armor, a decent speed for the zombies, melee attack and melee defense are quite low, but the weapon strength is with armor piercing damage and anti-infantry bonus. That overall is great, especially for that price, because you can afford a very cheap melee infantry that can stand the fight against all the other low tier melee infantry of your potential enemies. And overall I think that it's a very good option for your early game. Then we have the Nagash the Supreme that will be your elite melee infantry for the late game, that it's quite similar to the Grave Guard. I mean, there are not many differences, they just gain a little more of armor and leadership, and it's weird because you still will get access to the Grave Guard with Undead Legions. In any case, they have the anti-infantry bonus, the shield, the ecosphere, that is great because they can scare some low tier melee infantry, and yeah, overall they're not that bad. They have a huge weapon strength but not armor piercing, a good melee defense of 40, and the leadership is not that low as for the, you know, the zombie skeletons level, so they will be a little more resilient, and of course the speed is very low. Then there is the version with halberds that will be effective against large monsters in cavalry. They have the charge reflection and the charge defense, so they can withstand the charge of the large entities, and yeah, overall a good option if you want to defend your flanks. Now let's quickly talk about the regiments of renown of this category. The Burning Dead is a sword infantry with dual weapons, so the anti-infantry bonus, magical attacks, fire attacks, and this ability that can imbue the flammable that will reduce the flame resistance of the enemies. Overall they are fun, and I have to say that I really like this, you know, model on flames. Then we have the Revenants of Morghast that are the same model of the Sirens, and they're basically these ghosts with the Strider attribute, the physical resistance, a good armor in this case, the speed is more than decent, a good melee attack with the Frostbite, magical attacks, armor piercing damage, and yeah, overall I think they are a great option. Then we have the Throne Guard, that is a melee infantry with the shield and anti-infantry bonus. Their stats are quite good, I have to admit, for the standards of the skeletons. A very huge melee defense, a great weapon strength, and then they have many different attributes: the charge reflection, the unbreakable, the perfect vigor, and the guardians that will grant physical resistance to the lord and hero nearby. Then we have the Doomed Legion that I quite appreciated because they are a Khorne infantry model but with some skeleton features. In any case, they have the Guardian, again the Frenzy that will increase some of their stats, anti-infantry bonus, the shield, magical attacks, and this dampen that will remove the magical attacks from the enemy, and it will negate the magical weapons within the area. The second unit are the Spirit Hosts, that I'm not sure what is that, but the game count them as a melee infantry. They are basically this swarm of spirit with 0 armor, but they compensate that with a physical resistance of 55%, so they will be almost immune to the physical damage. Then they get a very decent speed, so they are quite fast. Melee attack and melee defense are low, but they get magical attacks and armor piercing damage, and then they have the Strider, so no penalty caused by the terrain, and this ability called Grasping Hands that basically is like the Frostbite, so they reduce the speed of the enemy that they are engaged in combat with of the 30%. Overall I think that it's an interesting unit. Then we have the Fell Spectres, that is the single entity monster of this melee infantry, the Spirit Hosts, and it works in the same way, so 0 armor but compensated with the physical resistance of 55%. The speed is quite decent again with the Strider attribute and also the Vanguard deployment. The melee attack is higher, but the melee defense is just 5, so you have to be extremely careful. The same ability and then a couple of augments, one that increase many stats, the speed, the weapon damage, the charge bonus and the melee attack attack, and another that will grant you the unspottable attribute, so you will not be, the enemies will not be able to see you. And then it got this attribute to the melee attack that will decrease the melee defense of the enemy and the speed of your enemies by 50%. That is a lot, okay? You will prevent them from moving. Overall, again, it's an interesting unit. It's quite weird, but at the end it works and the animations are quite fun. Then we have the Shade Hounds, that is the regiment of renown of the Fell Spectres, and it works in the same way. It just got enhanced stats and an additional ability that you can use only if you are in the forest. Now let's talk about the Cavalry added with this mod of Nagash. The first unit is the Carrion Riders. They basically took the vultures of the Tomb Kings and the ghost, the spectres from the vampire counts, and they created this kind of change bringer of Zinch unit that, is not that bad. I like the idea. They have a good physical resistance of 40, the vanguard deployment, of course they are flying. The armor is not that high, honestly. The speed is insane because it's 100. Melee attack and melee defense are okay with the frostbite, magical attacks. The weapon strength is armor piercing. Overall they're quite fun, and yeah, you can send them to the enemies. You have to be careful of missile attacks, for example, because given the low armor they can be quite vulnerable, but overall when they start to hit the enemy they will cause plenty of damage, so I think I like them. Then we have the Nagash Czar Knights, that are basically the upgraded version of the Black Knights, and they get far more attributes, for example the magical attacks, the frostbite that will reduce the speed of the enemies. They sacrifice the anti-infantry bonus, but they get the armor piercing damage. They still have the shield, a very good speed, a good charge bonus, and the strider attribute that will negate any penalty caused by the terrain. Overall you can just use them to replace the Black Knights, but they are quite expensive. They are basically between the Blood Knights and the Black Knights, so you have to choose carefully if they are a good investment. But yeah, I think they perform probably better even than the Blood Knights for the cost effectiveness, and yeah, I quite like them. They are definitely more resilient with a good leadership, and they can cause plenty of damage, versatile to hunt down enemies when they are routing for the frostbite. So yeah. The Doom Riders are the regiment or renowned version of the Nagash Czar Knights. They have better stats and then a couple of attributes more. The physical resistance of 40% and this ability that will increase the weapon damage with each kill made by the unit, and at max effect he will grant the Executioner attribute to this unit. Then we have the Undead Chariots, that is the only chariot unit that you will get with this mod, and in this case is the downgraded version of the Skeleton Archer Chariots that you will still be able to recruit with the Undead Legions. I'm not sure why they made it weaker. In any case, it's still a great chariot. They sacrifice some stats, but they get more charge bonus. They still have a decent speed, a good armor of 40, the range attack with of 120 meters, not armor piercing, unfortunately, the anti-infantry bonus. You have just to use them as a generic chariot, and I really like the model, this curve that they created. So yeah, a very nice job. Now let's talk about Virion the Grim, that is a regiment or renowned version of the corpse cart, not of the basic chariot, but I can tell you that it's far stronger than you may ever expect, and I will show you why. Basically, it's this corpse cart but with enhanced stats, because they got plenty of weapon strength, the armor piercing damage, anti-infantry bonus, magical attacks, a physical resistance of 75% that is insane, and then it got this ability called the Last Journey, where basically if there is an enemy within the range with hit points less than 20%, he will destroy instantly that unit, causing plenty of damage, and it will summon at its place a unit of skeleton reapers. And believe me, it's crazy. I love this kind of stuff, and you know, it truly reflects the the power and the concept behind these factions. So yeah, really wonderful. Then we got an artillery piece, the Bone Thrower, that there are some ballistas and they work in the same way of the Eagle, Bolt Claw, for example, of the High Elves, because they have two options of attacks. One that is the arrows, but I mean stronger, bigger arrows for large entities, and the second, more unique kind of ammunition are these skeleton or stones. I'm not sure. I tried to have a closer look at the model of this projectile, but I'm still not sure what is that. And yes, I mean, you have just to use it as a bone thrower. As a bolt thrower. They have this missile strength with armor piercing damage and the anti-large bonus. The range is 340. That, believe me, it's huge. And yeah, I mean, don't get it engaged in melee, of course. And I think it's a great option. I mean, for a faction that is not supposed to have artillery pieces. Now let's talk about the beasts of this mod. Let's start with the sand crawlers that are basically Morgul from the faction of the Vampire Coast, but they are made of bones, so a little more skeleton, a little more Tompkins, we can say. They are, I mean, they work in the same way. They have the Sulk attribute, so they will be hidden when they move around the map. They have some missile resistance of 45%, anti-infantry bonus. They are quite fast. I mean, not for a beast probably, but still they can try to flank the enemy to attack from behind. The melee attack and melee defense are a little weak in my opinion, but they are more more entities compared to the Morguls. So they just yeah, they are the downgraded version probably. Then we have the glowing ghouls that they work in the same way, but there are some differences. They are more entities, so it's even larger units with a good speed. The melee attack and melee defense are far better with the magical attacks and this ability called the Warpstone weakness that will reduce the speed, the weapon damage and the melee attack of the enemies that they will be engaged in combat with. Their weapon strength is a little higher, but without the anti-infantry bonus. They sacrifice a little of charge and they don't have the Sulk, but they get the physical resistance of 30%, the frenzy that will increase their stats when the leadership is higher than 50%, and then this ability called the Sickly Glow that will grant to all the allies within range the spell resistance of 25% and the melee plus melee attack of 6 points. So overall they are a good unit. Now let's talk about the Monstrous Infantry, and let's start with the Bone Golems, that are 16 entities with plenty of armor, a shield, a very huge shield, and this is the feature that I appreciate most. The speed is quite low, but it's expectable. The melee attack and melee defense are, I mean, the melee attack is very low, so it's not an offensive unit, but the melee defense is actually great, so you will use it to absorb damage. They are quite tanky. The weapon strength is high, but not that much compared to many Monstrous Infantry units in this game. They get the charge reflection that it's, you know, wow, because you can use them to protect your flanks or even your front line. I mean, depends on the situation. Overall, I think that they are a very good option. They are not that expensive for how they perform in battle, so yeah, I would really suggest you to recruit them. And then we have the Morghast, that is a flying Monstrous Infantry that we are waiting for in the next DLC, the Lords of the End Times, and they are very strong. They have a lot of armor, plenty of weapon strength, even if they are only 8 entities, armor piercing damage, they are quite fast, and of course they are flying a very huge melee attack, a good melee defense, a good charge bonus, the strider attribute, so they will suffer no penalty caused by the terrain, the encourage ability, so they will increase the leadership of the allies nearby, and then they have the animations of the minotaurs when they are on foot. I'm not sure which kind of model they used to make the flying animation, but overall I think they are great. They're very versatile. You can use them for siege battles, or I mean just to disrupt the enemy formation, because they are quite tough with that much armor. And yeah, I think they are a wonderful option, and I'm looking forward to see the Creative Assembly version. Now let's talk about some monsters, and let's start with this regiment of renown of the Vargulf from the faction of the Vampire Counts. That in this case there are 3 entities, not just one, but yeah, they works in the same way. They have the unbreakable attribute, the hunger, so they will regenerate their hit points when they are in melee. This ability, the blood frenzy, that will increase their weapon damage and the replenishment of the vigor when they are engaged in melee. And yeah, they can get the rampage, so be careful of that, but yeah, with the regeneration it will not be a big problem. And yeah, I like the model, I like this whitish aesthetics. And then we have Druthor, the King of Grimbarrow, that at the end is a Strigoi riding a Terrorgeist, so not that much different from the Lord of the Vampire Counts faction. Then he will get this magic missile that is a breath ability, some other augments of the melee capabilities, the regeneration and the hunger, that together will make this unit very hard to take down. A good armor, the poison effect that will reduce some stats of the enemy. The weapon strength is very high with the anti-large bonus and armor piercing damage. So yeah, overall a great option to have some fun. And at the end we got the Bone Colossus, that is the Regiment of Renown version of the Rogue Idol from the Greenskins faction, with of course a different aesthetics, and I love it. He got plenty of armor, 150, the speed of course is very low, but it's faster than many units in this roster actually. Then he got this missile attack that is not, I mean the Rogue Idol of the Greenskins, they don't have it, it's just the Regiment or Renown version, the big one that has it, but the others not. So it's good, but it doesn't have the ability to replenish the ammunition with, I mean, causing damage to himself. And yeah, overall it works in the same way, so very tough. You can use it to absorb damage, but I mean, even to deal, it got 600 of weapon strength with the anti-infantry bonus, armor piercing damage. It can break walls, and it got the missile resistance of 15%. So yeah, overall a very nice option, a little expensive of course, but I mean, I think that is truly powerful.